What is up, YouTube? My name is Trinity and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. So a few housekeeping things before we jump right into our video. First, I would like to thank everyone that has subscribed to the channel within the last week and within the last few weeks recently. We just hit 61 subscribers, which is so cool. I thought about on New Year's Eve maybe making the resolution to hit 100 subscribers by the end of the year, just because I like to keep my expectations low. But it seems like we may hit that well before the end of the year. So I just want to thank you guys so much for watching my videos, supporting my videos, leaving nice comments, and just coming back week after week, or weeks or months after whatever, to see what I have in store for you guys. You guys really seem to like the true crime video, so I'm definitely going to dabble in that more, starting with this video. While it is a continuation on the last video I did that was more legend and cryptid based, this is actually a lot about true crime, about murders and disappearances, and the next video I will be talking about will be focusing on one specific case that actually happened in the place I'm talking about today. So as we spoke about in our last video, no indigenous nations ever settled within the Nahanni River Valley, aside from the Naha people who went missing under very mysterious circumstances, and since then none of the native nations ever decided to settle there. There was just something not right about the valley. There were things in there, and the whole atmosphere of the valley just warded people away. So in that case, how did it end up with the nickname the Headless Valley? Well, that is because some people were brave enough or dumb enough to go into the valley in search of gold. There were a lot of rumors that the Nahanni was full of gold and a man could get rich beyond his wildest dreams there. And so a lot of people went in there in hopes of finding this gold. So two brothers named Frank and Willie Macleod were some of these prospectors that decided to venture into the valley. They actually went into the valley two different times. The first time, I think, was between 1904 and 1905. They apparently found a lot of gold, and they were so excited, and then there was an accident with a boat. They lost most of their gear, all of the gold they collected, and they just had to walk away kind of defeated. But they decided to come back because now they knew for certain that there was gold in this place. So in a lot of the places that I looked for information on the cases I'm talking about here, there were some discrepancies on exact years, dates, and just smaller details, so I don't know if that indicates like some of it's fabricated or if it was just lost to time. I can't imagine a lot was well documented about this specific place back then, and especially because Canada back then wasn't as developed as it is now. Somebody disappearing into the wilderness was kind of par for the course. So the two Macleod brothers decided to venture back into the valley, and they were never seen again, essentially. So after 3 years of them not coming home, their younger brother Charlie established a search party because he was just getting really worried about them. 3 years sounds like a lot of time, and it is, but again, without telephones and not a consistent way to communicate with others, if you were going to wander into the wilderness to settle somewhere or prospect for gold, it was probably going to take a while, so you probably mark time not by I'll see you next week, but I'll see you next spring or something like that, you know? So Charlie mounted a search that consisted of local trappers, indigenous people, and former mounted police. When they traveled into the valley, presumably by boat, they scanned the shorelines from the canoes they were in, and for a while they didn't really see anything that would give them any clue as to where his brothers would be. I can't imagine how daunting this task would have been, mostly because, like, it's the huge wide wilderness. This isn't like going to the park and looking for someone. This is miles and miles and miles of endless wilderness, deep dark woods, huge expansive rivers and canyons and caves. So it was obviously going to be like finding a needle in a haystack. So after a couple of days, they did come upon a very sad and grisly scene, to be honest. There are some discrepancies on how they were found, but two skeletons were found decapitated. Some sources say that they were left in the open on a riverbank. Others say that They were tied to a tree, but they were able to identify these bodies. Also, some sources say that they weren't decapitated, so I'm not quite sure where that fits in. Most of the sources that I've read say they were decapitated, but they were still somehow able to identify them as the Macleod brothers. Charlie buried his brothers and marked their graves with a cross, and from that day on, the valley was referred to as Dead Man's Valley, and that portion of river that they were found near was referred to as the Headless Creek. So no one knew for sure what happened to the Macleod brothers. Decapitation is a very human-ish thing to do. Animals could do it, but aside from like the eyes and the tongue and the little bit of flesh we have on our heads, most animals probably aren't going to go for that unless they are extremely desperate. There were rumors that there was a third man seen with the Macleod brothers before they died. Local trappers, other indigenous people that were traveling through the area. There were people that were there. It just wasn't normal for someone to settle, and there weren't a ton of people there. But when they did cross paths with the Macleod brothers at, say, trading posts or something, they did report seeing another man with them. And after the brothers were found, apparently this unidentified man had been seen at several other trading posts bartering using gold. There is a theory that the brothers did get very, very rich. They found a ton of gold and they established a mine. This is referred to as the Lost Macleod Mine. And because of their success, another prospector, whether it be the third man that was seen with them or somebody else, essentially took out their competition, and then the location of the mine remained a secret. Now, this mine has never been found. Nobody knows if it actually exists. People have looked for it, though. This third man was also never connected to the murders definitively. We don't even know if they were technically actually murders. They could have died of natural causes and then scavengers just happened to take their heads. I don't know. Other theories insist that maybe there was a prospector or trapper that could have gotten lost in the woods, and being isolated for months or years on end could have just driven them mad. I mean, there is a reason that solitary confinement is the absolute worst punishment you can get in a prison. We are very social animals, and we do not do well on our own for long periods of time, so that's an understandable theory as well. These murders or deaths are certainly not the strangest to happen within the valley, though. 9 years later, a Swiss prospector named Martin Jorgensen, not sure if I'm saying that right, decided to also enter the valley in hopes of finding gold. And he apparently did find gold. He somehow got letters back to his family and friends that he did strike it rich, and he found tons of gold, and he was set, basically. But after a while, the letters stopped, and family and friends became concerned. A search was mounted for him, and when searchers came upon his cabin, they found it burnt to the ground. His remains were indeed found inside, also badly burnt, and he was decapitated. But apparently, before his death, he had been shot from a distance, and that was probably what killed him. There was also no sign of all of the gold that he claimed to have collected, so again, this could have been an instance of rivalry between prospectors looking for gold. In 1931, a man named Phil Powers was also burnt to death within his cabin in the valley. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police said that it was simply a stovepipe that was faulty, and the roof caught fire and it was burnt to the ground. People, however, were unconvinced. Apparently, Phil was a seasoned prospector and was used to living isolated in the wilderness, and he knew how to build stuff. He wouldn't have built this stove in a way that would risk catching the roof on fire. Also, apparently this fire burnt so hot that there was nearly nothing left of the cabin at all, or his remains. If the roof had caught fire, people also pointed out that, and potentially smothered at least some of the fire out, which would have left larger pieces of rubble, larger pieces of log intact, but everything was basically razed to the ground. Between the years of 1927 and 1928, an outlaw referred to as the Yukon Fisher, who was wanted by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, was found dead very close to where the Macleod brothers were found nearly 2 decades prior. Alright, and now we're going to go back a year to 1926. Now this is probably my least favorite story, even though this is not the last story in this video. This is probably just one of the most disturbing. Sometime in 1926, there was a hunting party within the valley that was traveling, and as night fell, they decided to make camp for the night. In the middle of the night, a woman with the hunting party named Anne Lafferty, again, don't know if I'm saying that right, just apparently went missing from the hunting party, and she was not found. There was no sign of her. It was as if just in the middle of the night, she got up and walked off into the woods. Months later, there was another hunter within the valley who I'm pretty sure he was unrelated to the first hunting party, but he was sleeping near the river and he was awoken by stones falling into the river. So he poked his head out of his tent and he saw what looked like a naked female form running on all fours up the side of the hill above him.
Hell no. To the no, no, no.
When this woman looked back at him, she did match the description of Anne Lafferty, but she looked wrong. According to this hunter, she looked like a woman possessed. Her face was just wrong and twisted and evil looking, and he was just kind of frozen in terror as she continued to run on all fours up the mountainside. And he just kind of closed his tent and sat there all night in a cold sweat, hoping that whoever this was did not come find him. That makes me so uncomfortable. I hate shit like that. Humans not acting like humans scares me. Like, after this, there were no more alleged sightings of Anne Lafferty, and her body has never been found. I just have the chills from that one. I hate that. Like, just people crawling around. Like, I don't know why crawling freaks me out, but I think you know what I mean. Just a person crawling around on all fours is just creepy after you're not a baby anymore. To give me a bit of a break from thinking of that, I'm going to do a little speed round of other murders and disappearances that have happened within the valley. In 1929, another gold prospector named Angus Hall went missing without a trace. In 1936, two more men by the names of Eplin and Mulholland also disappeared within the valley. In 1940, a man named Holmberg was found dead. In 1945, a miner from Ontario was found decapitated within his sleeping bag. This was around the same time a man named John O'Brien also went missing within the valley, only to be found later sitting next to a campfire, but he was found dead as if he had been flash frozen, despite having the matches still in his hand when they found him. In 1962, an aircraft pilot actually crashed within the Nahanni and survived. He wrote in a diary about being well provisioned and he was confident he would be rescued. In an attempt to be more visible to planes going overhead and boats on the river, he traveled about 6 miles away from the initial crash site. Planes regularly flew over where he was, but oddly enough, he was never spotted or rescued. After 50 days, entries into his diary stopped and his body was never recovered. He was never found. The last disappearance that I am going to talk about today is that of May Lafferty, who went missing when she was part of a hunting party with her in-laws in the valley. Apparently, she just went missing. I'm not sure if it was overnight or if she just wandered off, but when people followed her trail into the woods, they just found clothing discarded one by one along her trail. And also apparently her trail would end in impossible places, like over a cliff or on the banks of a very rapid part of a river. But then somehow they'd pick up her trail again on the other side of the river or other side of the cliff or something, in places where a person would not be able to get to, at least on their own. And she was never found either. So the stories of Anne and May are probably the most disturbing to me just because the similarities between their cases are very interesting. They were with hunting parties and they just went missing. I'm pretty sure all of the other disappearances and murders I've talked about here are all men. These are the only two women I think I've talked about. And they just, for whatever reason, just wandered away from their group. And then Anne was later spotted naked running up a hill, and May apparently was undressing as she walked deeper and deeper into the woods. And then these are also the only two with like undercurrents of something not quite natural, like supernatural, paranormal, or something going on. Anne was described as looking like she was possessed and she wasn't acting right. And then May apparently was able to get to locations, or her trail indicated at least she was able to get to locations that she should not have been able to get to. So these two cases really just raise the hairs on the back of my neck, because they're not like the other ones where they could have been murdered or succumbed to the elements and just disappeared. Something weird happened with them. Please tell me your thoughts and theories in the comments down below. Just make sure you keep it respectful. These were actual people that met untimely deaths or just disappeared altogether. I don't know if family and friends are still out there, but no matter what, just please keep it respectful when you're telling me what you think down below. Now, in my next video, it'll probably be my last video on the Nahanni Valley, unless I find something really interesting to talk about again, but I'll probably be taking a break at the very least after in the next video. I'll be talking about two men that were found dead within the Nahanni Valley in 2005. Under very mysterious circumstances, but I thought they deserved a video of their own because it is more in-depth than a lot of these are. And also, as of 2018, their families have been calling for the case to be reopened because they were not pleased with how the initial case was handled by police. They thought stuff was looked over, and they just want to get justice for these two men. I hope you guys will stay tuned for that. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video if you think somebody else will like it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.